recording. All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you are listening and where you are in this world. You have tuned into another great show of DrBryantSpeaks.com. Our show was created to support military veterans and families out there in the world. However, based on the responses I am reading, it appears that our audience is growing rapidly into other avenues, such as law enforcement and community support organizations, which is wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Now, my name is Dr. Bryant. I am a military veteran, master life coach, entrepreneur, college professor, and your host. And I want to thank our sponsor today, Savvy, Strategic Alliance for Veteran Integration. This organization provides veteran programs that help you track your financial, emotional, physical, and mental progress post-separation. They are committed to giving you the VA benefits you deserve and helping you build a successful life after you transition out of the military. So please go to their website at savvyvets.org. Now, if you are new to listening to this broadcast, I want to say welcome and thank you for tuning in. I started this because being a veteran for many is no easy transition into being a civilian. However, it is not easy for family members either. So we need to collaborate and learn how we can support one another. And if you are a returning listener on any of my social media platforms at DrBryantSpeaks.com. So keep them coming. Now, speaking of shows, you may have already listened to one of the podcasts about small business and a interview we had with Michael Graybo. He was a former president of the Disabled Veteran Business Alliance. Well, if you enjoyed that show and gained a lot of useful information, you're really going to enjoy my next guest. He is what I call a success story in his truest nature, but it did not happen overnight. I asked him to join us today because it won't be long before his company no longer qualifies to be a small business. My guest will share some useful information, tips, and experiences. So without further delay, the president of HSB Solutions and executive vice president of Enterprise Networking Solutions, and my friend, please say hello to the listeners, Mr. Chad Hodges.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate you bringing me in today. This is fun. I'm excited.
Hey, I'm more excited. In fact, you're probably my most nervous guest I had because of our background. So I was like, I got to make sure I do this right.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
All right. So I know you're a busy man. So I'm going to jump right in and ask about when you were an employee working for somebody else. For those listeners who are trying to understand, walk us through your mindset when you decided to do your own thing and more strategically collaborate with your current boss. Tell us about that.
Yeah, for me, I've always had sort of that entrepreneurial spirit, right? I mean, I much like yourself, have always strived to do something better, right? And something greater, especially when I started to have a family. But that work ethic, and that was instilled in me by my dad at a really young age, right? I joke a lot. I tell people about the first job I had where I actually had to pay taxes, right? I was a paper boy, right? I was 11 years old, and back then you had to be 12. So I actually fibbed a little bit and said I was born a year earlier. So the joke I have is I'm always waiting for the IRS to come back and say, hey, we need that 37 cents for that year when you were 11 and you should have paid us taxes, right? So, but it starts young, right? You start to realize that you have a certain desire to, build something greater than yourself, right? And part of that being entrepreneurial isn't just about building a business and being successful, but it's about being constructive and giving back to your community as well, right? And in my community, growing up in Sacramento, giving back to my region, but also to my veteran community as a Marine Corps veteran and having served all over the world, and then coming back to an environment that, we have veterans that are struggling every single day, dealing with and coping with the things that they dealt with, while in service. And so, I have these two things that tug at me strongly, right, that I'm very passionate about outside of work, which are, the veteran community and my own Sacramento, California community, right, and making sure that the people that are disadvantaged or need assistance are getting it, while also overcoming their own pride sometimes too. So I think, my motivations are not just about making the money. It's about, the money works itself out if you work hard, but it's about what can we do greater than ourselves, right? And make our community better, right? I mean, between the few companies that I'm involved in addition to the two, IT companies that I work in, I also, am involved in a restaurant. I'm involved in an MMA gym, right? These other really cool things. A couple of, non-profits that I've been involved in, both in technology and in veteran services, right? So it's just a really exciting thing. So when I endeavored to say, okay, I'm no longer going to be an employee of a company, I approached my business partner shortly after him making me a partner of his company and said, look, there's new rules, new laws coming on the books here in California. We should really evaluate the idea of me starting a company that can make sure that other disabled veterans are represented properly and that we're able to be a contributing member of that community. And he agreed because he's a veteran himself, right? So it just really was an easy conversation. It wasn't something that we had to, really, painstakingly figure out. It was just more of, we know this market needs it and we know that we can help and contribute. So it was really that simple of a conversation for us.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I did not know that your partner was a vet as well. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. Now, did he actually choose to leverage the small business and DVBE for his company, or was that something he allowed you to do since you guys were already partners?
Yeah, it was something that we talked about. One, it would be self-serving for ENS in that we could ensure that we have the ability to access and tap into those requirements for bids that ENS might respond to. But bigger than that, the community at large. I've worked with integrators for the past decade that need to fill that requirement and actually what they call a commercially useful function. And I think that's the misnomer that happens a lot and where the reputation starts to get a little sideways for people is, these bigger companies don't get it. They don't understand why the state of California has requirements to do business with small business and DVBE companies in California. And so I feel like it's my responsibility to educate people on exactly how best to do that and why we do it and what that CUF really means. CUF is the term commonly used, commercially useful function. Because I think a lot of these big companies more see it as a bureaucratic requirement and they just want to figure out how to write a check and get you out of the way. But my pride and my being a Marine and my work ethic, I like working for my dollar. And I think that's where the reputation sometimes gets sullied is people, get the idea that, hey, well, maybe they'll just write me a check and I'll be the checkbox in their bid and we'll be good to go. But that's not my MO. It's not the way I'm built. And so I like to try to strive for better and be better. So.
And I'm glad you said that, Chad, because actually in our other podcast, we talked about CUF specifically, commercially useful function. And you also touched on something where sometimes people just check the boxes. And I remember the term called pass-through. And that was actually, as the organization was growing and it was becoming more popular and the state of California was early in the stages of doing this, we kind of saw that realistically. So because of that, a lot of critics started coming around and saying how this was a scam or they're just handing out opportunities to vets. And there are some, unfortunately, who were being taken advantage of because they did not understand. Now, based on your company and the structure that you work in, you talked about the ethics of being a Marine, being a veteran, how it's important for you to demonstrate. Tell us what do you think about that and the rumors behind this? Where do you guys stand now?
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, you hear that all the time that, there's some sort of, favoritism being showed to DVBs and things of that nature. The predominant amount, the predominant group of DVBEs that exist, and there's not a lot of them in California, but the ones that are what I would say are the good ones, are the ones that are really saying, listen, I'm trying to come to the table to work for my dollar, right? I'm not trying to come here with my hand out, right? That is never the intention of something like this. But what the program that California established for both small businesses and DVBs put together is it really established an ability for us to at least be given a chance, right? A shot at doing some good work for the state of California. We have a skill set, we have a work ethic, we have a drive, and chances are our rates are obviously probably very good as well, right? So You see DVBs up and down the state that fulfill all kinds of different functions. I happen to be an IT specialist, and that's what I do, right? Personally, as an industry professional, I'm an engineer and a project manager by trade, right? So I've managed and implemented systems across this country and across the world at all different types of companies. So my experience is broad, but my leadership ability and the things that I learned in the Marine Corps also forced that work ethic that I want to change that reputation. I don't want people to think that. I've had companies approach me and say, hey, we just need to check the box. Can we just, figure out what that percentage is and cut you a check? And I tell them no. And if that's the kind of partner you're looking for, I'm not the right one, right? Because I'm not going to ever want a reputation that says, oh, I just, sat there with my hand out, or that I checked a box and I didn't really add, any value. That just came up 2 weeks ago. I had a partner on the East Coast who's never done business in California. They didn't know what a DVB requirement was. They reached out to DGS. DGS said, hey, here's a list, but hey, we also know Chad Hodges, he'd be a good guy. He'll tell you kind of the way of the world and what this vehicle's about. So the contact at DGS gave him my name, and I talked to him and I kind of walked him through it. And he goes, well, I'm responding to a bid that really only requires, 2 or 3 people. And I said, okay, that's great. I said, do you have a project manager assigned? And he said, well, no. And I didn't think I really needed one. I go, yeah, you probably do, because you need to make sure that there's proper reporting happening and the communication plan is established. Even if it's sort of a staffing contract, you want to make sure that you have an intermediary that understands state process and knows how to do reporting, so that your invoicing doesn't get hung up, so that your project expectations don't get diminished. I can help with that. I'm local. I'm able to establish that for you. And all of a sudden the light bulb clicked. He's like, well, there's my commercially useful function. That's how I can make sure that I add value. The contract value in the grand scheme of things, I think if he's awarded, I think was like 200,000. So all he has to do is come up with 3%, right? So that's not a tremendous amount. It's like 30 to 40 hours over the span of a year just to make sure that everything is smooth and that it goes well, and that I understand the state's invoicing process, so I can help him with that. So I can make sure we set proper expectations, develop a communication plan, and then check in every month to make sure that the work is being accomplished the way the state's expecting it to be, right? So, and his reputation looks good, my reputation maintains its impeccable, ability, and we move forward.
And this person gets to expand into the state of California. He gets a business. So
Absolutely.
for listeners out there, obviously you may be in another state and you're probably wondering how you could expand your business in the state of California. Not to say that your own state may actually have something similar. So look into your own state, but also consider coming over to California what the opportunities are there. You heard Chad mention DGS. In my other show, we talked about Department of General Services in depth, and we also discussed about their procurement process. But you also heard Chad mention project manager, contract, budgeting, invoicing. All of these are skill sets. So think about what your opportunities are. Think about if you're actually going into these fields, but the opportunities, the contract is definitely open. The procurement process is not complicated, and you can definitely learn how to leverage what you're interested in our state or your own. Now, Chad, I see on your social media that you attend a lot of different events and you go to conferences all over the region, states, etc., and I admire that. Now, instead of waiting on the 3%, where you are out there, you're actually beating the street. Talk about how important it is to network.
Yeah, networking is key. I think for me personally, I really enjoy the human experience, right? I like to get to know people just because I want to know who they are. It's not for what I'm going to get out of them. And I think that's the mindset that people need to change when it comes to networking. Networking has a lot of positive aspects to it, right? And if you are genuine and if you are really trying to expand what you're doing, it's going to come across exactly that way, and you're going to be received really well. It's why my network on LinkedIn is so extensive. I mean, I think I'm fast approaching 16, 17,000 folks, right? So, and that's simply because, my travels in my industry are, the industry in IT is very intimate, and we all know each other a lot, with the different manufacturers and stuff. But so the connection points are, they always talk about 6 degrees of separation. LinkedIn and social media make it like 1 or 2 degrees of separation, quite honestly, right? So very quickly you can start to figure out how to navigate. Let's say you're in sales and you're trying to figure out how to navigate an organization. Social media, LinkedIn, things of that nature, those different platforms, they're able to say, they're able to give you an inside view to what exists. And then you can simply start to figure out if you have connection points that get you into that account, and then you can start to sell your wares, sell your capabilities, sell your, your product, whatever it happens to be. But I also think it comes across from, I like networking for another reason. Addition to, obviously making our business very, very successful, it also lets me grow, right? I think if we ever are so myopic to believe that we know everything, or that we've already lived a life and so we have all this experience, and that we're not open to different ways of doing things, that actually is the other big byproduct for me out of networking, is learning how other business owners are doing things, or learning how my competition is working, or learning how my customers are broadening their horizons and what they've got going on. I really take a lot of pride in learning. I want to learn more. I know there's always room for growth. There's never, the old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm here to tell you, I'm an old dog and I learn new tricks every week, and I love it, right? So, I used to be a young dog, I used to be a pup, and now I'm an old dog and I'm still learning stuff, right? So, if you ever think that you can't learn, you need to have an open mind, an open heart, and be willing to believe that others may have a different way of doing things that might, and it doesn't mean you have to make wholesale changes in who you are, your personality. It just means be open to the idea that there's other ways to do things that might be beneficial to your growth.
Yeah, I could actually vouch for him learning. It wasn't that long ago. I remember you got your PMP. I was impressed by that, because I was like, why is he getting his PMP? He's already got a successful business. He's up and running. I mean, he could have easily hired somebody to do that. But knowing you did that for your own personal gain, for your own insight. You didn't necessarily have to actually work as a project manager, but you wanted to have that knowledge set. Am I right?
Yeah, being in the Marine Corps, I actually already did a lot of project management, and I just didn't know what it was called, right? I was already asked to do projects, and I would get them done, not knowing that I was actually creating scope, schedules, and budgets, and doing that, right? So when I transitioned out and I went to work for MCI WorldCom, I was an engineer by trade, and a very senior project manager approached me and said, hey, because I built his project management platform for him, and I did it in like 2 weeks, and he was super impressed with that. But he asked me, why do you seem to be so down or negative about, me and my team? Why does my team feel like, you're bothered by us? And I said, well, I'll be honest. I always have this interpretation that project managers are just trying to cover their own butts, right? And I never really liked it. So we had a very open dialogue and conversation about what the role of a project manager is. And I went, oh, I'm already doing that myself. Like it was really eye-opening for me when he said that. And then he mentored me, and he really gave me, his name was Mark Doctorman, guy's still in our industry, he's a fantastic man. He gave me a lot of insights and gave me the confidence to say, what, go get it. I think you can get your PMP. And so I went and did that, and he was right. It just made me more well-rounded. It made me a better consultant. It made me a better engineer, because now I was thinking ahead too, bigger than myself, right? Thinking about the overall success criteria and what others might need to do as well, so that I could coach and encourage them as well. So.
Exactly. If you guys are interested in project management, please go see PMI. They were the oversight that provides those certifications. However, that'll be another show.